Welcome to the West Ham Voice, Friday late night. Haven't done one for an awful long time, so I hope you're all doing well. I'm on my own. Well, I'm not really. Nigel isn't here. He's at an event because it's 45 years tomorrow. We're celebrating our 1980 FA Cup win, and it's just gone a few days. It's about 9 days past, or 7 days past, sorry, where it's 50 years. When we won the 1975 FA Cup. I don't know which one he's celebrating, but he's away. But I do have someone else I'm going to bring on in a moment. So I'll bring that guest on in a moment for you. What are we going to talk about? Well, normally a bit of a free-for-all, no script, but there are certain stories that have grabbed the attention, aren't there? You know, certainly we now hear 4 players are definitely leaving. It's kind of known that the players that were on their final month of their contract are likely to leave. There are 2 players that haven't been mentioned. I'll talk about them with my guest. And then, of course, a mystery buyer, someone who wants to come in and not buy West Ham United, but wants to invest in West Ham United, an American buyer. I've worked it out, and I'll tell you why I've worked it out when I bring my guest on as well. And I'm sure there'll be other stuff that we want to talk about, and we'll be looking at your comments as well. So good evening, and welcome to the show. Let's bring our guest on. Hello, mate. How are you?
Hello, Stel. I'm very well. How are you?
As I said to you before we came on, I'm a bit tired. I didn't get a lot of sleep last night. Forgot that my daughter was bringing her dog round for me to dog sit. I hate dags. I like dags. and the wife's out, and I've nicked her white wine. So
well done.
If I manage to make it through the evening. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right actually. Just did a show earlier, so it's I'm all warmed up. I had about half hour's break.
Okay, you got an advantage on me. Tell people about. I'm sure they know the channel, mate, but tell everyone about the channel.
The Bobby Moore Stand, yes, it's a West Ham channel where we talk about West Ham and try to not get too excited with all the anger that's going on. Put it like that.
And there's lots going on, and yet there isn't lots going on.
Exactly.
An awful lot of regurgitated stuff going on.
Too much. And that's the problem with reporting news on West Ham is, you know what? When I talk about something twice, I can hear myself repeating it.
Yeah.
And so I hate that, because I think if I was to be watching the channel, I just think, oh, you bloody told me about that already, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, I struggle with repeating news unless it's moved on and it's an advanced stage. So when you boil it down, you take out the repeat news. We kind of cover all that we're doing a couple of lives a week at the moment. We're picking up, mopping up everything that's out there, because, you know, a lot of it is just crap that dies off in a couple of days, right? By the time you talk about it, it's old news and it's been debunked. So
this is it. Yeah.
But a transfer window, I'm quite looking forward to, actually, because there's going to be a lot of movement. I mean, I just hope that, you know, what we want, when you look back at our transfer, I'm sure we'll come to talk about this, but when you look back at what we've done since Sullivan and co arrived, so often during a transfer window, we've bought the wrong pieces.
Yeah, we have, and let's move on. Let's move on to that a little bit later on, because I think we're thinking along the same lines with transfers. We sort of seem to do it for the managers rather than as a club perspective. So, but the news that the story tonight is very much when I worked it out, who I think this American billionaire is that's going to invest in us. And I'll tell you for why, when you talk about regurgitating news, because I talked about the same thing, and I dare say you did as well, and most other channels did as well, this time 2 years ago, when there was an American billionaire, a secret American billionaire, looked like he was going to buy the 10% shares that were up for grabs from the Gold family. If you remember going back after David Gold died, was it Vanessa Gold inherited the shares, etc., and she put up 10% for sale.
Yes.
And we heard that this American billionaire was interested, but nothing materialized. And it's come around again. And I messaged a certain person that we both know before the show started, and I went, Robert Kotick. And he went, how do you know? And I said, because we talked about this 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much you know about Mr. Kotick, Mr. Bobby Kotick. I've got a few details.
I know he was involved in Activision, or is involved in Activision.
He was, Yeah.
There was a few, duds that he was involved in. He was involved in Yahoo as well. So I wondered if he was ever on the board of Blockbuster.
That I don't know. I know he's on the board of Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're absolutely right. He was the CEO of Activision Blizzard, big organization created in the gaming industry. Look, I'm not a gaming person, so
Me neither.
I don't know much, so this is all over my head a little bit. But I think he was. They bought one of the biggest games around. Was it? I'm looking for the notes.
Call of Duty.
Oh, they launched Call of Duty, and then they bought Candy Crush or something like that. Anyway, he's big, and they were bought out Activision in 2023 by Microsoft, and he retired at the end of that year, and he's worth about, give or take, £700-800 million. What's couple of hundred?
So he's not a billionaire then.
Well, he's called a billionaire. Maybe he's a paper billionaire. I think he's got something like 700 million cash flow.
Oh, right. Okay.
So
700 to 800 million more than David Sullivan's got then.
Exactamundo. So where David Sullivan, everyone thinks he's a billionaire, he's got it in property. This guy's actually got 700 million just in his bank account. Small change.
What a good place to be.
The
one thing, and one little interesting fact about this is something that came up in my comments tonight, because we did discuss this earlier, right? And there's a few people who knew a lot more about his history because they're obviously into gaming. He was the person who started ripping off customers by selling digital assets. So, for instance, if you're playing a game, you got to buy this sort of digital gun or this digital, a piece of armor or something to help you through the game. So it's basically in-game sales.
Purchase,
yes, in-game purchases to give you more powers in the game. He was one of the innovators in that, and that has arguably been one of the biggest rip-offs available in that game.
So in order for you to continue playing the game, you've got to buy that add-on. Otherwise,
in order to progress through the game, you need some of those
progress through the game.
But the thing is, ripping off customers for non-existent digital assets, it's kind of the same as buying cryptocurrency, really. It's one of those things that you buy it, it's of value to you while you're playing the game, and it's dead, right? It's it fit him really well with our board, I think.
Well, Avid's got a few comments about him as well. I really hope it's anyone but Bobby. He's a piece of shit. Ran Activision Blizzard King into one of the worst rated companies. Treated people like crap. Under investigation by California for sexual misconduct too.
Oh,
what did you just say? It'd be perfect for us.
The boxes still. He ticks all the boxes. Bring him in.
Now, let's just get a perspective of what's actually happening, because these 10% shares have been on offer for quite a while, 2 years now. We've had no one's buying them, and then from my recollection, about a year or so ago, maybe a bit shorter than that, there was a lot of talk about maybe balancing out the shareholds and looking for an investor who is going to have an equal sharehold with Kretinsky and Sullivan. So Sullivan's got 38.8% sharehold. Kretinsky, 27%? And there's talk about those two potentially reducing their sharehold with the 10% that's available from the Gold family, creating another 25%, give or take. And then the rest of it will be so there'll be Sullivan, Kretinsky, and a third person owning the same sharehold, and then the rest of it would be owned by the rest of it by the Gold family, Trips, and whoever else.
You've got to wonder about the motivation here, Stel, and I think there's a bigger motivation at play than, and that is around American ownership in general. There are 11 American owners in the Premier League. There are 2 Arab owners who have already proven themselves to support the American owners when they do something like a breakaway American Super League. The whole motivation around the Super League really was to have no promotional relegation. It was to have a closed shop. Because that is a big risk, because they're not making the margins that they expected to make on football, because every extra penny they earn in TV revenue is spent on increased player wages, right? So this doesn't make sense to the Americans. So they're just trying to, find out where the next big play is coming from. And here's the danger. The Premier League have got a rule that says, if you've got 14, it's kind of super majority, would vote for, because the Premier League themselves don't make up the rules, the clubs do, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's the clubs that vote through or block new rules. Now, if somebody wanted to propose no promotion or relegation, if you had 14 owners all singing from the same hymn sheet and they were willing to back it, then it would happen, and it'd be unopposed. You couldn't do anything about it. It would happen, and this would be, in theory, because you got to say Kretinsky's in it for the investment. This guy would clearly be in it for the investment. They could potentially work together, and that would be maybe West Ham's vote. I'm not sure how the constitution works at West Ham, because you've got Sullivan as the chairman still. I don't know if having shareholders who are willing to vote together in a block would in some way enable them to take Sullivan out of that chairmanship role. I'm not sure how the constitution of the company works. Do you know that?
I to be honest, no. I think it will be, if Sullivan was to sort of reduce his sharehold, I think it'd be like any other company. If others came in as a block, they could vote him out.
Exactly. If it's a majority vote, that's really what should happen. So if this American came in and he buddied up with Kretinsky, then you've got a majority block there, and they could, in theory, overthrow Sullivan. And in theory, that could be the 14th vote to really take the Premier League onto the next level as far as they are concerned, and onto a really terrible level as far as us fans are concerned.
Yeah, I think you've got a point there. I don't know. I've tried to look at whether Kotick has owned or has any own investments in other sports, because usually when you look at certainly American owners, they'll own an American football company or a baseball company or whatever, and I can't find anything like that. So I don't know what his motive would be. Would he go all guns blazing and do that? I don't know. Sort of like a bit of a hostile takeover. I don't know.
This is how they operate.
It's an interesting.
Americans are very serious at business, right? They don't take any prisoners, and nor does Kretinsky. He is ruthless, and so when you put presumably this ruthless guy that really treated his employees and Activision customers like shit many years ago, rinsing them for digital assets and stuff. All right, that is the way American companies tend to work. They want year-on-year growth, quarter-on-quarter growth. They want there's got to be an upward trajectory, and that is never ending. It's infinite, right? They always are looking for the next growth opportunity. And there is really, when you're talking about the average P&L in a Premier League club, it's borderline loss making. Many people make losses. That's why the PSR states that you're allowed to only lose 115 million over 3 seasons or something like that, right? It's the maximum losses you can make, because most clubs do make a loss. It's only the likes of us who have been strangely profitable while we're in Europe, but I dare say that's going to stop this year. But they're in this position, this very tough financial position. Even giants like the likes of Man United, which was, again, there's so many things you can talk about, but they were bought with debt. They were literally, the Glazers took out a loan to buy Man United and then transferred that debt onto the balance sheet of Man United, and now the fans are being asked to pay it back by Ineos, the new what's his name, who's come in. That's why their ticket prices have gone up massively. So they're basically paying off the Glazers' debt for them. I don't know how that's legal, but this sort of jiggery pokery is going on around the world of football at the moment, and it's got one thing in common: that is, the fans are not getting a fucking say in anything that's going on. And I do fear that slowly but surely they're going to move us to that American model, the franchise model. And all right,
so are you worrying then? You're predicting in a way that this could be the end of football as we know it.
I think one way or another, whether it's this American owner or another American owner, I actually thought the 14th owner was the Everton guy, but clearly I was mistaken there. So we're still on 13, thank God. But this could be, it ain't really whether they're American or not, it's whether they believe in those ideals.
In that ideology.
Yeah. And rinsing customers and maximizing the asset is what they're into, because the Sky money or the TV money, it's a worldwide TV audience which generates 3 to 4 billion. But really, that ain't a lot of money in the scheme of things, is it? You know, when you consider each American football team, NFL team, for instance, is worth about 3, 4, 5 billion. That's what they think running a sports team should generate if you've got that sort of franchise model where you can maximize it, you can move it around. Look what they're doing now. They're playing NFL games at Spurs. I mean, that's going to make us happy, innit? If you see West Ham, Chelsea in Bangalore, you know, don't rule it out, because the first step.
This has been spoken about for quite a long time. Just 1 second, mate. Someone's mentioned that the sound doesn't sound good, so I've just tried to change something in the background. So people do tell me if the sound is all right now. But going back to that, you know, this has been spoken about quite a lot. I remember years ago when we first sort of like got to see American football over in this country. You know, it was quite exciting and it was different. And, you know, there was talk back then. I remember it the reverse. There was talk back then about American football being brought over to England, you know, having a few of their league games, you know, being brought to this country. And that's happened, you know, and I guess it's almost for the Americans. Well, if we can do it that way, there's absolutely no reason why it shouldn't be done the other way. And then you've got, as you've just said, the Asian market, where, you know, the audience is vast. The audience is enormous.
Yeah, especially for the clubs like Man United, Arsenal, Liverpool, obviously the traditional ones. There ain't a big audience for Spurs or Chelsea or anyone like that. And I think Man City is just a growing one now. But having spent quite a fair amount of time in India, for instance, everyone supports Liverpool or Man U over there. It's mad how many fans there are. I went to it was the Kingfisher Tower in Bangalore, it's like a complex of the Kingfisher Lager, obviously, right? And they've got it's a very rich company, so they've built this complex for their employees outside, and they were showing an outdoor screening of, I think, West Ham against Man United or something, and literally there was probably about 4 West Ham fans in the entire thing. I mean, it's mad. You know, but that is the franchise model that the American consumer has accepted. Because in their own words, Americans see going to football as an experience, and the experience can be monetized quite a lot. And so you've seen the tunnel lounges at Tottenham and at Man City, where you can watch the players walk out for a premium, right? All these different bolt-ons that they can do to make it more of a premium product. Every time they do that, they're taking it more and more away. And we've seen it at West Ham, lowering the number of season tickets because they want to sell more to day trippers, tourists, because the money is in it. And so if a board's going to do that because they're responsible to their shareholders and delivering shareholder value. So of course they're going to do that. But this is where we're very different. What do you think, Stel? Why is the Premier League the most attractive league in the world? What would you put that down to?
I think because of the way the fact that we can attract, you know, talent from around the world, so people get to see a Brazilian player, an Argentinian player, you know, a German player, etc. We can, and we've got that, and it. I remember, you know, you and I growing up Premier League. It was actually exciting football. It was you know, to and fro. I remember watching quite a lot of Italian football. My ex was Italian, and I remember watching an awful lot of Italian football. And that was, you have to be a purist in a way to watch Italian football, for example, because it's slow, it's all technical, it's all played at the back and all that sort of stuff. And I remember when I used to go out there, my ex-brother-in-law, he was a fireman, and we play five-a-side football. They weren't interested in getting the ball and running down, you know, and smashing it in the goal. They were interested in passing the ball around about 30 times before someone slotted it in. It was a technical game. Whereas our game, it's bang on. It's, you know, that's what excites people. And then you get all the talent in from around the world.
Yeah, there was.
That's what made it great.
The thing is, think back to before the Premier League, because those planes started landing when the Premier League money was here. They weren't here before, were they? They wasn't here before, because you remember like the likes of Gaza going to play for Lazio.
Yeah.
You remember, you know, all of our exports who went to play for Barcelona or someone like that, right? They were the glamour leagues. They were the ones that took in Madrid's Galacticos. They just had to have more world superstars every year until they suddenly realized Real Madrid are not as rich as Man United, as Liverpool, as Arsenal, right? It's in a way, it's reflected in the European competitions at the moment. And we saw that with our own eyes. Even little old average West Ham, we had such an expensive team compared to a lot of the teams we were playing. It was sometimes a bit of an unfair competition, if you like, even though, you know, we did bloody well to win it. No, not taking anything away from that. But you're seeing it time after time at the moment. You know, you can get a really average Spurs team turn up and they can thrash a team who beat Lazio, on their plastic pitch. And that team was broken. We saw that Spurs team play the other day, right? But they're still better. Even their reserves are a far superior quality, because the Premier League is played at such a high pace. Our players are so much more physical and so much fitter, and more expensive luxury items than any other league right now. And then add to that, still, that's the first thing. It's the aggressive football. It's the pace that it's played at. Add to that, it's the stadiums and the atmosphere generated by the fans. Added to that, it's the tribalism between clubs. The you know, when you take away two of those things, like you can have a stadium full of fans, it's going to be like a Subbuteo pitch. It'll be full of fans, but it won't do anything, right? It's not going to sing. It don't know the words, even if it wanted to sing. We see that all around us at football every week. You see baffled-looking tourists kind of enjoying the atmosphere, but they don't know what they're watching. They don't know that they're in, say, the Bobby Moore stand, where it's like that used to be where a lot of the atmosphere came from. Right now, I had 5, I think they were Sporting Lisbon fans in front of me a couple of weeks ago. Chris had someone else behind him. This, you know, there are certain parts of that crowd. When you walk it down, Chelsea was the one. You remember the away game Chelsea where we played really well? Well, if you look down at that stand right next to the away supporters, it was literally full of tourists, and you could tell that they were tourists because they didn't have a clue what was going on.
Yeah, they didn't know what was going on. Yeah, yeah.
So yeah,
but this is the I mean, this is the price we're going to pay, isn't it? Because it's going to end up sanitizing football so much in this country that people are already talking about. You know, and not just, but for some time, people have been talking about going back to watch grassroots football because they're just bored with the Premier League. And you know, and I remember going back again.
Yeah,
sorry, mate.
Why should we do that still? Why should we?
No, I totally agree. But I remember again back, you know, when I used to go to Italy quite a lot. They were excited because Sky Sports had just introduced Sky Italia, and showing, and my brother-in-law, who's an avid fan of football, of Cagliari in Sardinia, he used to say, right, I don't need to go anymore. And I go, why would you not go? It's on TV. I don't need to go anymore. And it was like, you know, they were already starting to think, what's the point of going? I can watch it in the comfort of my own home. Now, I'm surprised that hasn't happened here.
That's not.
But given the way football is turning out, it will get that way, won't it?
No, it's not us. It's not us, right? This is burning deep. The only reason that Super League got rejected was because of the outrage of the fans. Now, you can just ignore the fans, but if you've suddenly got an empty stadium and it's going to take you a while to fill it up again, and then it's not going to have much of an atmosphere, you know what I mean? It's a massive risk to just turn your back on the fans. Like it would be a massive risk for Liverpool of Anfield or Manchester United of Old Trafford to start playing home games, league games overseas, right? It might be good for the tourists. It ain't going to go down well with the people that made them, which is the working class in this country. Most of the players come from the working class. Most of the fans come from the working class until now. So what do? Because the rich Americans come in and say, this is our ball, we're going to take it and play with someone else. You lot, it's off, right? Do we just forget about it and say, oh, fair enough, you're richer than me. You take our game that we've loved all our life and our team that we've loved all our life. You take it and do what you want with it. We'll just watch it on telly now. No, frankly, they can do one. And so this is where we really need, this is where fan power, I'm not just talking about us, I'm talking about every single club. This is where fan power needs to count. It's a pivotal time because it's coming still, it's coming.
Yeah, you've taken it on an interesting angle, and rightly so that this story, because I remember this whole thing about the Americanization of the Premier League and what it can actually do to our football. And you're absolutely right. When it comes to voting as to how football should be run, the Premier League will dictate, and everybody will follow the lead. So if they turn around, if there are enough American owners or enough American investment in the Premier League, and then one day they decide they want the game in 4 quarters rather than 2 halves because it's good for advertising, etc., more advertising time, who's going to stop them? They could. I don't know. I mean, maybe it will go to UEFA, FIFA, and all that sort of stuff. But it is a bit scary, isn't it? That it can the input of money from America can Americanize our football.
Well, FIFA and UEFA are there to be bought. You know that. This is how we've ended up with Qatar-based World Cup, a Russian-based World Cup, and things like that.
Yeah.
It's mad that ever happened. That's pure, unadulterated corruption. And so I wouldn't rely on UEFA or FIFA to help us out with this sort of thing. The fact is, our products in this is unique in this country, but it's not just what goes on the pitch. It's largely what goes on off the pitch. If you get rid of that, say all fans tomorrow just walk away in this country from their clubs, all fans, what will those clubs have left? They'll have absolutely nothing left as a product. They'll have some flashy, overpaid players. They'll have nobody to buy their bloody shirts. It will look pretty crap on telly, won't it? Well, you're going to fill it up with tourists who are going to sit there and have a nice day, be like watching.
Well, this is the thing. This is the thing I've always said. There's a danger here about chasing the most expensive seat over giving it to a season ticket holder, where when West Ham United are playing Chelsea, Arsenal, Liverpool, etc., you're going to fill those seats. When West Ham United are playing Southampton,
you're not.
I'm sorry to say, you're not going to fill those
your seats for those games, right? You've tried. You can't sell them. You can't sell them. But the Americans took this on the chin. The American consumer took this franchise model on the chin, and now they literally go to the highest bidder wherever the state is going to give them tax benefits and everything else. They'll just think nothing of picking a team up and moving it there. So that's another thing. These are location specific, these teams, right? You can't just do that. This is a much smaller country than America, and we're not driven by, as a nation, we're not driven by greed and shareholder value. We're driven by love of our football club. We don't frankly give a toss what.
Do you look at the German league, for example, and have a slight envy in how that's done? Because there's a lot of fans who have a say or an ownership in the football clubs. I mean that's no way that could ever happen here. I think it's probably too late for it. Unless TV companies pulled their money out, and then we'd almost have to start again. But
clubs would go out of business if that happened. Let's be honest, they're relying.
Well, clubs will go out of business. That's true. But when you look at, say, Germany, you can't imagine this sort of thing happening. I don't know.
It wouldn't be allowed because they've got, I think, a 51 or 50% stake from the fans, representatives on the board. It's very much in line with what, you've worked with Germans, their workers' councils, employee protections and all that sort of stuff. It's an amazing model that I'm deeply envious of in Germany. Have fans actually having power to develop the club in their own image, the way they want it run. So they've got the board, the other half of the board are doing the business side, but they're doing it based on what the fans, who are the lifeblood of the team, that's where the club. How did the club become famous and successful? It was through its fan base, clearly, right? Without the fan base, the team can't get the money to do well. And football has always been a business. It's just never been like this sort of business, is it? It's never been it still ain't big money in the scheme of things. It's average money in the scheme of things, but we've never had this. This is a working class sport, which everyone's been brought up with. I've given it down to my kids. I took it from my dad, from my granddad, from all sorts, and it's just generation after generation. We've deeply loved the football and deeply loved the football club, not the company, the club. and I'm afraid we're not going to be like the Americans when the Americans are, oh, fair enough, the rich man wins. We'll just let them take it and set it up down, in Las Vegas or something.
What the Americans do as well. I mean, I've noticed in American football is if they decide to uproot and move, I don't know. I don't know who the teams are, but let's say I know that LA Chiefs moving them to Kansas City or whatever. They'll just do that because if it's in their business interest to just upstick and move
it's
a whole team.
Business
to
is all that matters still in America. It's all that matters, and the public over there is conditioned to appreciate that as a valid reason for doing something. But over here, I'm afraid this is like a local utility. This is something that belongs in our community. It doesn't belong to a big group of people who want to pick it up and transplant it somewhere else, unless you want to just do away with the fan base.
Yeah. Let me just answer Elbows. Look, by the way, I've ticked a couple of questions, especially about transfers, etc., that we'll come back to later. So please don't think I've ignored your comments. But this one's an interesting one. If we'd made Europe, would we be having this chat about owners? Well, ironically, Elbow, as I said at the start of the show, this story first came out in 2003. 2023, when we were actually in Europe. So. This is a bit of I'm not saying it's a regurgitated story. It's just interesting. It's come at a slightly different angle, because back in 2023, it was just talk about the 10% share that the Gold family had to sell.
Yeah.
Now it could be a bigger stake. That's what we're looking at. And you're absolutely spot on, Gary, and sort of going into what you said about, having that big stake and how many American owners there are and what influence they end up having over the Premier League. It's a bit daunting, really.
It's awful. They could literally ruin the game that we're as if the Premier League and the FA and everybody else, with these rules they've built in, and VAR, as someone mentioned in the chat earlier, these things that we had no say in, that we would absolutely reject tomorrow if we had the choice. The game has changed beyond any reasonable doubt, and you can't recognize it from the game when the Premier League started. We still had a situation where players were earning a reasonable wage. It was like, all right, it might have been 10 times, 15 times an average salary, something like that. Now they're earning that every week. It's madness. Nobody's worth that amount of money still.
Yeah, I agree. It will eat itself, as people say. Eventually that's what will happen. It will just it will implode. It's got to, hasn't it? The bubble's got to burst at some point, it feels like every time you hear about the latest, record transfer, every time you hear about the latest salary offer, etc., you think, where can this go? What was it? Who was it? Was it Messi that was getting 500 grand a week or something? He was at PSG, and then he was crying because what was it? I know it was Barcelona, wasn't it? And then he was crying because he couldn't stay because they couldn't afford to pay his wages, so he went to PSG. That's mate, reduce your fucking salary then if you're on,
This all goes back to that Belgian player, Bosman, wasn't it? Bosman. That Bosman
ruling
completely fucked football. It really screwed football up. I do believe that players deserve more rights, but they don't deserve all of the rights.
It's gone too far the other way.
That's what they've got now. They had no rights before, and that was wrong.
Yeah. So let's bring this back to a sort of a more basic level. If there is interest, I mean, we've already, and thank you, Avid. I've been reading your comments in the chat. They're really quite interesting about Bobby Kotick. I don't want to say this because I don't know the man, and I can only go by what I'm being told and what I've read. But he sounds like a bit of nasty piece of work.
Don't want him. Even from what I saw in my chats.
Do we have a choice?
No. Well, no, we don't. We don't have a choice. Whatever happens. If Sullivan wants to sell to someone else tomorrow, he will. It won't have anything to do with us. I hope he does. But it's like out the frying pan and into the fire with some of these things, because Kretinsky is another one who is literally in it for a return on investment. You know that. Yeah. And so if you've got him budded up with someone else who's also in it for a return on investment, I dare say Sullivan is as well. I think if someone made him a decent offer that was in line with his expectations, he would walk as well. I don't care what he says. I think he would do that.
isn't this the other danger? The other danger has always been everyone. A lot of fans going on. Can't wait for the day for him to sell up. Can't wait for the day for him to sell up and move on. Under new owners, it's going to be better. It's not necessarily going to be the case, is it? I mean, you've only got to look at. You mentioned earlier on about Man United, for example, who have their current owners have laid so much debt on the club. They're in massive debt. And
yeah, it's amazing still. The Glazers, what they did, they bought that club with debt, and they've been paying off their own debt through the club for ages and drawing a salary and everything else. They've taken so much money out of that club, and now any geezer whose name I forget comes in and says, "Dear fans, we cannot carry this debt on our balance sheet. You're going to have to pay it off." Oh, it's beautiful, isn't it? I mean, all the cards stacked, you're holding all the cards as one of these people. I'm surprised you're allowed to do that, though. I'm surprised you're allowed to do that.
Yeah.
It's bloody weird. Anyway, I'd say no, but look, what Gold and Sullivan and Brady, Gold and Sullivan did at Birmingham was to sell them to a guy who was a convicted fraudster, and Birmingham went down the toilet, and it's taken them a long while to circle back.
Once the current owners are gone, they couldn't give a fuck what happens.
No. Well, there is worse than Sullivan.
This is what I mean.
No, but that don't make me want to keep Sullivan.
No, and that's not what I mean. That's not what I mean.
I want him to sell it to someone who's going to be a good steward of the football club. But that won't come into the equation.
But this is the West Ham way, Gary, isn't it? When we go back before Sullivan and Gold, we were the only club to have someone buy us who went fucking bankrupt a year later.
Bankrupt billionaire, the only bankrupt billionaire. Only West Ham. Yeah, I know.
But that is typical West Ham United. Everyone else goes and finds an owner who's like, he loves the club, or sort of like is properly established or really stable. We go and find a biscuit baron that's skint.
Yeah, and I think Eggy, to be fair, who wasn't the billionaire, Eggy who ran it, I think everyone kind of had a soft spot for Eggy and his big ball.
We did, yeah.
He seemed to really buy into it, didn't he, Eggy?
He did buy into it. He went and got us, what was that Arsenal player that he went and got us?
Oh, yeah, it was a good signing. Yeah.
He had good intentions, but this is my point, I guess, is it'll be typical us, we'll be celebrating the day that Sullivan sells up, only to find out that we're in a bigger pit than we were with him.
But that would not, that would just be the final grand leaving present of the Sullivan regime.
That would be, wouldn't it?
In that situation, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't make me want to keep Sullivan.
Yeah.
I just hope that whoever, because the value of an asset is appreciating in terms of a Premier League football club, my big worry is that unless we get this summer rebuilding bang on, and he does put his hand in his pocket and he does back the manager and let the manager get players that he needs, we could, with all those different parts. I've never seen a team swap so many parts out still as we're going to have to swap out and be successful.
Yeah,
we could get relegated still.
Well, let's move on to that. So we're done and dusted with Bobby Robert Kotick. Kotick. Sorry, Avid Kotick. We're done with him. Let's now talk about. I mean, the change. Thank you, Garino. It was Lumber. Thank you for reminding me. I didn't want to be reminded, but thank you. Wasn't it? Didn't he come to us and then he also launched a clothes.
He had an underwear
clothing business, and I think he was more interested in getting that off the ground than he was for playing for us. But anyway, let's not cry over spilt milk. 4 players gone. We now know. I mean, it was I did sort of wonder whether out of the 4 players that were announced today, whether 1 or 2 of them may have been kept on. Now, I kept thinking if any of them will be kept on, it might be Creswell and it might be Fabianski. And Creswell, because of the obvious, because he's been a good mentor for Ollie Scholes. And I thought maybe another year, probably Creswell can get a lot of game time. So I thought that. And then in terms of Fabianski, I thought, well, maybe he'll be kept on because, yes, we want to look at maybe a new goalie. But for me, that wasn't the biggest urgency. the goalie area. You know, when we look at the way our defense has been this season,
It is. I'll explain why in a minute.
Okay. No midfield, no striker, etc. So I was thinking maybe Fabianski will be kept.
Yeah.
Now, are you surprised that the 4 that were announced today have been announced, or were you
only one of them? One of them surprised me. That was Creswell. Because I thought Creswell, because he's been playing a little bit, and he was good for Skulls, for helping develop Skulls. So I was a bit surprised they let him go. But what Chris said to me earlier on the show was that, you know, he was told, he did say this a couple of weeks ago to me, didn't make it onto a show, but he said that Creswell's been asking to leave because if you remember, he wants to go back up north. He tried to go to join Wolves.
He did
last season, right?
Yeah.
So that's not to say it's probably his call that he's not renewing his own contract. He maybe would have got offered one. Fabianski, that's really no look. Vlad, he's got to go. He's been finished for a couple of years, in my opinion. No pace. He does a job when he comes in, but that's about the size of it. And who else? Danny Ings. Well, never should have happened in the first place, should it really? He's
never should have happened in the first
3
place.
years.
Totally agree.
115 grand a week.
125, but what's 10 grand amongst friends?
Yeah, I've undersold him. 125,000 quid a week for. It's not his fault. He's a good honest pro, but he must have been rubbing his hands together when we offered him that deal. It's like the final hurrah of your career. It was. We've got to stop doing that. But
this is what I'm hoping that we will stop doing.
Yeah, we can't be that club that gives an old player their final payday. And now Fabianski, there's a good reason. I'm glad he's going because he's 40. There's a combined age of 139 or 137 years old. We've just got rid of there in 4 players, right? That is going to take the average age of the squad down straight away. He's on 75 grand a week, Fabianski. That's a lot of money. Why are you paying that to a 40-year-old? All these players who have got older, then naturally over time, their wages has gone in, you know, regular upward increments. That's why we're paying that amount for Danny Ings. Probably the other 2 that are going are on decent wages as well. I know Vlad's only on about 60, isn't he, or 50 or something. Only.
Let's have a look. So Fabianski is on 65 a week. Ings is on 125 a week. Soufal is on 35. I think it's more like 40, 45. I think it was originally 35. Creswell is only on 50. And there's 2 players that have not been mentioned today. Kurt Zuma, who's on about 80 to 90 grand a week.
How much are we paying of that 80 to 90 grand?
It's not been revealed.
Say half, right? So we're up to about 340 grand so far. What's next?
Yeah. And then Antonio, he's on about 80, 85 a week. So what I've worked out, it comes to roughly for these players, including Antonio, because I don't think Antonio will be given a new deal. I think he might,
still. He did that. He did that. I've got sympathy for him. Of course, I have. He's been a great servant, but he's 35. When's he going to be fully match fit? When he's 36 and a half? I mean, we can't sign him. No,
I totally agree. So roughly, the total wages per week is 450 grand a week. 450 grand a week.
So 4.5 million every 10 weeks. So that's about 20 million, 22 million.
23.5 mil.
23.5 mil saved in year OPEX for those wages. So it's significant, isn't it? It's really significant.
It is significant. And when we talk about when there's an awful lot of talk about there's no money in the bank, you know, to buy players. Yeah, okay. People are going to argue, well, hang on a minute, you've got to replace these players and you've got to pay them wages. Absolutely, you're going to have to replace most of these players, but you're not going to be paying someone 125 grand a week like Danny Ings. You're not going to be paying someone 85 grand a week like Antonio. You're not going to be paying someone 85 grand a week like Zuma. So yes, you will replace these players, but you might be paying almost, you know, for most players, probably about half or a third of the money, because we are going for a completely different type of player now.
Even up until last summer, we were doing this, right? We signed James Ward-Prowse, aged going on 30.
Yeah. That was a Moyes
million quid.
Yeah,
30 million quid. Who's been nothing short of a. I mean, honestly, I don't mind him. He's a hard worker and a good pro and all that. But when you're talking about a Potter style where he wants to zip the ball around midfield, every time it reaches him, it stops.
Yeah.
He's not fit for purpose. So now we've got a 30 million value player. Don't know how much is it would have been 20% up front, probably, wouldn't it? So it would have been 24 grand and another what is it? How many years did we give him?
I think he was given a 4-year deal.
Bloody hell. So we've got to stop that. The only players, to my mind, that we sign who are over the age of 28 need to be exceptional. So, for instance, we need a leader at the moment. So if you were going to bring a leader in who's an established leader who's hardly ever injured, and you're going to get 3 good years out of him, no longer than 3-year contracts, right?
Yeah.
You go 28, 29, 30, 31. By the time they're 31, they're up for, and then you assess if they're still fit or not. You do not do what we did with Füllkrug, and you sign a 32, and I like Füllkrug, but you don't put a 32-year-old on a 3-year contract. You put him on a 1-year contract.
This is what we've done wrong. I mean, and I mean, as much as people have talked about Steiden and, it's not just Steiden's fault, etc., etc. When you see something like that, Steiden bringing in someone who he knew was injury prone, and he gave him that sort of contract, and he gave him a decent contract, that's when you start questioning the way we've managed our money at West Ham United, whether it be Sullivan himself, whether it be Steiden, whether it be Moyes. I never forget Moyes' interview when we were ensconced in Europa League, and he went, I treat the money like I treat it my own. And then he went and got rid of Haller for half the money that we paid for him. He went and got rid of Anderson for nothing, and then he brought in Scamacca, and then he got rid of him for nothing, less money.
The little 30 million on what's it called? Who ended up as a left winger, a really ineffective left winger. What's his name?
Yes, the central midfielder who said, I can't play. I can't remember his name. I can't play on the left, and he was still used out on the left.
Yes. I mean, so many square pegs in round holes, and we've done it all the way through. Moyes was very culpable for it, but Sullivan, he's the one who signs the checks. He's the one who makes the final decision, bar none. It doesn't matter who's picking the players; he can block it, and he considers himself an expert. He ain't really. When you look at what happened with Füllkrug, and this is the word on the street, Stel, you've probably heard the same thing, is that he, Steiten wanted the guy at Villa, what's his name, the guy with the big mouth and, the short fuse, the striker who we were constantly linked with.
John Duran.
Yeah. And we knew Villa wanted a certain amount. Sullivan did his usual trick of making an offer that he knew wouldn't be accepted.
Wasn't going to be accepted, yeah.
But he knew that he wanted to bring in Somerville, and so he told Steiten, go find a cheaper striker because I'm going to bring in Somerville. Window was running out. We had no striker. He's brought in Füllkrug. Probably the only way you can convince an established German international to come over to little old West Ham from the side he was at was to offer him a mega contract and pay over the odds to the club to encourage them to let it go. Yeah, it shouldn't have been that way. We didn't even need Somerville, and I like Somerville, but we didn't need him. Right?
Well,
it's
this
like is the either, did we?
Yeah. Well, the thing that I said about Steiden, I know people say, "Oh, so it's really easy to lay into Steiden now," but I did. I'm sure you did, and because I know I've done. There's a guy called Eggy. He's a German. He's a West Ham fan. He's German, and he comes over to West Ham quite regularly. He's in the Bobby Moore lower.
Yeah,
and he started to say to me, I'm going to send you some stuff about Steiden, read up on it. And it was all these German articles about him. So I had to get them translated, etc. And it was like quite eye-opening. You know, it's like, because we made, and I'm guilty, we made him out to be the messiah of West Ham United. We said, when Steiden comes, it's going to be a new dawn, a completely different era in the way we manage our transfers, etc., etc. And what happened last summer, we could have done without Steiden. If we want to go out and buy an injury-prone striker who's in his 30s, paying him a huge wage, we didn't need Steiner to do that for us. Sullivan can do that with Danny Ings. If we needed players who just didn't fit in, we didn't need Steiner to. What disappointed me with Steiner was, and he kind of got found out for me, and I'm not just blaming him, but he kind of got found out for me in the transfer window last summer ended up feeling no different to transfer windows that we've had over the past few years. We had a mixture of players that just didn't really seem to fit.
Do you remember when Sullivan announced that Moyes won't accept the director of football, so we're three of us going to sit down and make an agreement on who we're going to sign, and lo and behold, we end up with them picking a few each. Exactly the same thing happened last summer. Lopetegui got his 3, Kilman, Soler, and the other midfielder who's really slow, who you don't see, Guido Rodriguez,
Rodriguez,
they were his 3.
I'm trying to wrap my brain because they're all bloody slow.
You don't see them very often; they're so slow. So those 3, and they were, really one of them's been partially successful. Soler's been all right in patches, pretty good. Rodriguez just been unsuitable to the Premier League. Then you had the Sullivan choices, and they were Somerville, who decided not to have an op, and now he's probably not going to be fit until next season. Not having a go at him over that, even though I did last week. I don't know the strength of the matter. Someone said it could have affected his pace, and that was his decision. Whatever, right? I would have thought if the club advises you to get an operation because you need one, you should have the operation. We did not need him, and that's where the Sullivan influence comes in. We did not need to spend that money. And then you have, right, what's starting got left over? All right, I'm going to have a gamble on someone who looks like he's got everything. He's going to be amazing. He's got pace to burn. Let's get in Guilherme. He's considered one of the top 10 young footballers in the world in this latest report. We didn't need him, right? Let's get in another striker because we need a striker to compete with Antonio, who's on his last legs. I know we're getting an old German who's all been. They were his choices, but a lot of those choices, if you remember, were made late in the window.
They were,
right. Guilherme was early. But that Fulkrug, who else he signed? He signed Todibo, and Todibo.
I remember Todibo took a long time because because they kept trying to. He was seemed hell bent on going to Juventus, but Juventus, ironically, they're messing him around. Actually, was good for us.
And again, though, Lopetegui couldn't get any use out. I don't know if it's Lopetegui's fault or the player's fault. I don't know. But he couldn't get any use out of Todibo. Todibo eventually gets brought into the side under Potter. Even now he's looked pretty good at times. He's looked like a bit of a Rolls Royce at times. But he's also looked like he's got no bloody pace come about 70 minutes. His tank is empty. So why is that? He's played a lot of games now. Why is he still so unfit? So when you look at all this, it's just like this sprinkling of players. We could have done so much better. Why did we not buy a leader? Why did that not come into? And again, Lopetegui is his parting gift that we're still paying for is making Bowen the captain. Not having a go at Bowen, but he's not a leader of men, right? He's a very, very good right winger, England international who leads by example, doesn't encourage others to do But unfortunately, in that team, leading by example ain't going to do much, right? Because they need to be led, as Creswell proved last weekend, because you've got Todibo, not a leader. You've got Kilman, definitely not a leader. Have you heard him speak? Like the most meek guy you've ever heard. Then you've got AWB, not a leader. You've got Emerson, not a leader.
They do their jobs well with
a leader, yes. And that's why Creswell had to be put into that team last week to lead. And that's why this gets me in a roundabout way back to the original question about Fabianski. Because we've got Areola, who's silent, the quietest bloke in the dressing room, apparently. You got Fabianski, who doesn't say anything. They're both good shot stoppers. They're both crap at crosses. They're both awful at distribution, right? They're terrible with their feet. Areola is in the top 5 most highly paid goalkeepers in the Premier League, but in the bottom 5 goalkeeping statistics. So that's not value for money.
Now, I'm going to play devil's advocate there because when Areola first came to us, I remember a lot of fans were saying, when's he going to get his chance? When's he going to get his chance? And Moyes deliberated for 2 seasons before Areola became the number 1. And I remember when Areola arrived and he was playing for us in European football, he was absolutely superb.
He was amazing. He was amazing. I remember the save against Sevilla.
Seville, but not only the shot stopping, but the command of.
You're right.
He was a completely different goalie.
He was a different keeper. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
And something's changed. And people have questioned this a few times. And one of the mainstays of West Ham in the back room has been the goalkeeping coach.
Really?
who has not changed for something like about 6 or 7 years now.
Yeah.
And I can't remember his name. I'm sure someone in the chat will know. But I've just asked myself, Areola, when he first arrived, is not the keeper he is now. He was confident, he commanded his box, he was great shot stopper and all that sort of stuff. But he was, the reason why we were all as fans calling out for him to be our number one was because of how good he was in goal. And he kept demonstrating that every time he played for us, especially in the European football. He was a leader of men. And it's changed and I don't know if that, I think one of the things one of the worst things that can happen to a goalie is when your manager loses confidence in you. If you make a few mistakes, I would say keep him there, and let him get over the mistake. The worst thing that can happen is you take him out with other players, you take him out of the firing line. It matters, but not as much as the goalie. You take a goalie out of the firing line because he's made a few mistakes. And you're basically saying to that goalie, you're absolutely, mate, and Fabianski and Areola were swapping, becoming number ones. Like
they was, and it all went wrong horribly under Lopetegui, right?
And it went horribly wrong.
He kept dropping one, bringing the other one in, dropping them, bringing the other one back. He's like, because he was an ex-keeper, wasn't he, Lopetegui? And so clearly he was losing his, he was doing his pieces where the keepers expected more. I expect more as well, to be frank, because I do remember that. You are right, he was great in that European tour, but maybe he's more suited to European football because the manic pace of the Premier League. Under Lopetegui, he wasn't good. But under Potter,
Xabi Zalero's the man's name.
Yeah. Right. Under Potter, he's even worse. Yeah, that's right. That's right. He's even worse. And there's a stat from the Spurs game. He attempted 29 passes and only 6 completed. That's like balls out. Yeah. Long and short. 26 out of 29. In a Potter team, the goalkeeper is really, really important. We need a goalkeeper to bring the ball out, to be able to use their feet, to be able to bringing the ball out of defense, right? It's a possession game. It's a lot of our players need to be press resistant. They're not press resistant at all. But most importantly, we need a leader and someone with a big gob, whether that is a centre half or a goalkeeper. Someone's got to be organising that back line. I don't care which one it is, but it's got to be one of them. And most importantly, the keeper's got to be out. His distribution's got to be bang on. Quick throws, actually knowing, sticking to a game plan. Don't just lump the bloody thing, which is what he does. So I'm not. I'd see Areola as a number 2 next year, not a number 1. I think a new keeper.
Do you think we're actually going to go in and buy a number 1 keeper?
We must have a new keeper, a vocal keeper who is comfortable with distribution for the Potter system to function correctly. Otherwise, it's not going to function.
Yeah, I agree with that. But then we've got the fear of someone coming in who I think is a worse keeper than Areola or Fabianski.
But we either buy into the Potter way of doing things. And no. I mean, I know you're talking about, and we don't know whether he's the one or whether that's just paper talk linking us with a relegated club's goalkeeper. Yeah. I hope it isn't that. There are other options out there, and Macaulay, frankly, earn your money and find a young keeper. He wasn't shy about bringing for a youth team keeper at Brighton. We've got a young England youth team keeper. I'm saying it's probably a bit too early for him, but I'm just saying that is possible.
Well, we've got quite a few keepers who've certainly been out on loan a couple of times. There's Mason Terry, who was with Hornchurch, but that's quite low league. We've got the Eggy, who's been out on loan, but not getting an awful lot of game time over in Hungary.
Who's the under-18 England keeper?
Sorry?
The under-18 England keeper. We've got him, haven't we?
We have got him, who's been playing for the under-18s or the under-21s, who was training. Was it the under-21s? I thought it was the under-18s. Oh, fair enough. I think he is in the under-18s, but he's been playing with the under-21s. We've got loads of keepers on our books, but maybe
a young kid. Surely that's the sort of position where it's. I know the Premier League's different and everything else. It's a whole different standard.
But if we bring in one of our young keepers, that to me suggests that Areola will be number 1 next season.
No, yeah, you're right. You're right, actually, and that can't happen unless we bring in a leader at centre half,
Yeah,
right?
to
So,
really
yeah,
command.
Mavropanos has got to go.
Well,
And
I'm going to ask you. But I agree with you, Mavropanos. You know, the Premier League is not for him.
mm,
But I'm going to ask you about Max Kilman.
mm,
Because when he first arrived, we were cock a
yeah,
hoop, 40 million.
yeah,
Oh, yeah, that's all right for a class England centre back. You
yeah.
know, he's not worth
Hmm.
40 million.
He looked good for 10 games under Lopetegui. He got lots of men of the match, whatever you want to call it. For us, even though we weren't playing that well, he was the pick of the players. He did play pretty well. Remember away to Palace as well. He started, fucking hell, he looks brilliant. He's great with his feet. The way he carried that ball out and passed it, it's like, oh yeah, he used to do futsal and all that. It's like, oh really? You know, yeah. And so we started to think that maybe there was something a little bit special here. And slowly but surely, it started deteriorating, and now it's deteriorating. It's fallen off a cliff, and it's not showing any signs of resurfacing again. And the one thing, and it's ain't his fault, right? It's just you've got to evaluate the whole person, not just what they do with their feet on a football pitch. It's the person, the character, the leadership. When you hear him interviewed, again, he's a massive introvert.
Now, I made excuses for him when things started to
Yeah.
go a little bit awry at the back. I started making excuses for Kilman. Well, 1 minute he's got Mavropanos as his
Me too. I made the
partner.
same excuses. Yeah.
And now he's got Todibo. Now it's Mavropanos. Now it's Todibo. Oh, and now it's a back three. Oh, and now he can only play in a back three if he's in the middle of a back three, not on the left of the back.
Yeah.
And I was finding I was making it, and then I'm beginning to realize, hang on a minute.
It's a common thing.
Am I making the excuses for someone who's actually not as good as he should be?
He should be better than that for 40 million. I think we were mugged off. Wolves got it right, laughing at us.
Yeah,
it's probably a 30 million late 20s player, not a 40 million. We overpay for him. We overpay for Fulcrum. But Lopetegui wanted him, and he insisted upon him.
Yeah, yeah, and we're kind of, because if we do. I can't help but feel there were stories a couple of weeks back that apparently he's not Potter is not keen on Kilman, you know, but if we sell him, we're going to take a massive loss again, aren't we? You know, it's going to be yet another player that we're going to have to give away for maybe 25 mil, something like that.
It depends who he can bring in, right? And again, I was having a chat on the phone with Chris about this last night, and I just think that if we can bring in this one position, centre half, where I don't mind if we bring in a seasoned pro with leadership skills, can he go and get Dunk off of Brighton for a couple of seasons?
But can you imagine the outcry of the fans when we? Do you remember when we got Dawson?
I love that. Yeah.
Do you remember when we got Dawson? And like, you know,
then he turned into a hero.
He turned into a hero, but I remember the stick that Moyes got when we signed Dawson, and like, you know, people telling him he didn't know what he was doing and all that sort of stuff. And what we're doing, getting the has-been sort of centre back, you know, who hadn't proved himself, etc., etc. But you're absolutely right. You know, the irony is, you know, we go and spend all this money, and this isn't just on centre backs, but this is on players around, you know, the whole squad. We go and spend a lot of money on a player.
Yeah.
And because of the price tag, we think this guy's going to be superb. And yet, don't we need a Craig Dawson? If we had a Craig Dawson in the team,
we need leadership so badly still. And so, you know, for me, I would get really, you know, it's sad, isn't it? I would get really excited at being linked with Dunk. I love Dunk. I think he's such a horrible bastard to play against. He's a leader, a proper leader.
And he could be good for us. He could be a Dawson type player.
Yeah, get that armband on, son. In you come. You're captain of West Ham now. Sort this mob out. But
I mean, I wouldn't be averse to that. I mean, I wouldn't be.
An exception to the rule. You don't start signing loads of 30-odd-year-old players. If it's an exception that's going to get you out of a hole for a couple of seasons, and it's good for them because they're going to earn mega bucks for a couple of seasons, and they're going to, you know, he ain't got a bad fitness record either. It's someone that can come in, hit the ground running, be aerially dominant, and hopefully he could even get Kilman and Todibo to function effectively, right? It's like a coaching role as well. You see what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. Someone mentioned about a Gerd. I mean, we keep hearing stories about, that Potter wants to see what a Gerd's like in pre-season, etc. I guess it's all down to whether the player himself wants to come back to West Ham. When he left on loan, it sounded like he was his departure statement sounded like it was farewell for good.
He's not a leader. He's not a leader,
and he's another one who's not a leader. Yeah. So, I mean, I think you're right. I think this is where we lack not only leadership at the back, but also leadership throughout the whole. It's and maybe that's why I have if there is a player that's a bit of a leader in that team, and I know people are going to hate me for saying it, it's Sojo.
Yeah, obviously, he did well those couple of captains games. It was a couple of games he had the armband, didn't he?
Yeah,
he's done all right.
Yeah, but we don't know whether he's staying or going. But let's get back to, so these I've put out all six because these are the six players that are out of contract at the end of this season. So we've already heard four are going. I think Zuma is gone. I'm pretty certain there's no way, we're going to offer him because it'll be the end of his contract. His knees are gone.
Spare parts, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Yeah, so there's no way he's gonna. What part do you want to keep of him? His knees are fucked, and I don't know about his head. So, and then we come to Mickey.
Nah.
Well, I mean, we can't, for sentimental reasons, keep him.
Take the sentimental crap out of the equation. It doesn't count. You should not give a player. Because he'll want the same contract again, right? If he was going to settle for 10 grand a week, 20 grand a week for a year, I might say, yeah, give him a year on 20 grand a week. But you're going to have to pay him the full whack of whatever he's on, 190, whatever it is, for another year and take a massive gamble that he might get a fraction of a season out of him. But I want to see a new regime at West Ham. I don't want to see a 35, 36-year-old, nearly 37-year-old Antonio leading the line. He's going to have
having to rely on him yet again.
He's going to have
in the way we've done season after season.
That crash is going to have impacted him in some way. I would say he's going to be better off suited to find a little job in a Championship or League One or something like that for the next couple of years. It's surely not going to be able to get back to Premier League levels of fitness.
I can't see it. It. Do you think maybe the club have held off announcing it because of his mental state?
Maybe it's to be nice. And I do feel sorry for the guy. He's obviously, a little bit, I don't know. It was a stupid thing to do what he did. I'm not being horrible to him, but it was kind of self-inflicted. And it's not the first time he's had a serious road accident like that. Well, not quite like that, but it was dangerous, right? It was very dangerous. And he was lucky he didn't have his seatbelt on, which he should have had on, because otherwise he would have been dead. It was awful. Bloody awful. And it put the wind up all of us. We don't do emergency shows on the Bobby Moore stand, but that night we did, right? Because we thought it was bloody horrible reporting that stuff, right? People were affected by it, and I'm sure his family and everybody else. And Harry's come back to being able to walk is like a miracle.
Yeah, let alone playing football.
It doesn't mean
the fact that he's walking again. Yeah,
it doesn't mean we give him a new contract. Love you forever, Mickey, but you need to go and find yourself a championship club now.
I agree. So that means we'll have six players gone. I'm pretty certain he won't be back. Yeah. That means we'll have six players gone, and then of course we've got the two loan players, Soler and Ferguson. Now, my understanding is people keep asking what was the point of Ferguson. Now, from what I've heard, but this is hearsay, and I can't corroborate it, is that he doesn't apply himself very well in training. I don't know if you've heard much the same.
Exactly the same. I've heard this from I've got a decent Brighton source who warned me before he came that he's fallen out with a manager because ever since he had that run of games where he scored a load of goals and then he signed a new contract, his eye was off the ball. Let's put it like that. He was influenced by the wrong people outside of football, in with the wrong crowd, party boy, out all the time. They couldn't get him back on the straight and narrow, so they trusted Potter to give him one last chance and see if he could make a difference, because he was the guy that gave him his chance in the first place, right? He thought we might have had a special relationship, and with Bruno at the side, it might have given, new environment. But lo and behold, he came down here and this is what I heard last week, he came down here to London it was even worse than Brighton, because he's out literally every night after training, encouraging other players to go with him, not interested in training, lifting a leg, not interested when he comes on the pitch. You can see he's basically running down his contract. He'd probably be like, make an effort in the couple of months leading up to his contract expiring, but that's not for a long time yet. It's a waste of talent. It's really tragic, and it's sad that, Brighton were angry with West Ham apparently because we weren't living up to our deal of giving him regular football. But
you don't give someone regular football if they're not up to it.
Exactly. And Potter's supposed to be sending like regular reports on his progress and everything else. That's why there was no option to buy, because Brighton didn't want to give us the option to buy, because they thought Potter would resuscitate him and turn him into an 80 million player again. He's too bob now.
Yeah. And Brighton are going to be stuck with that player unless they can find a way of, re-engaging with him when he goes back there. So that means we're already, even before we start thinking about selling players and start getting money in, because of course we're skint.
Yeah.
That's 8 players gone out of the squad. Now I know Potter has said, if you can't change players, change players. Which was, I think, quite an interesting comment that he made. So now we go on to players who, we're going to have to sell because they're just not. Their heads, their minds are not a West Ham. And you could, you can make your own mind up who they might be. Of course, a lot of fingers are pointing at Edson Alvarez. And it's going to be
3 managers so far, reputedly, right?
Yeah.
3 managers. So there's a trend there, isn't there? And the common denominator is Edison Alvarez.
Yeah. So when it's players like that, and there's players that are a bit disruptive, I'm beginning to think, and I put in the strap line of the show tonight, that we can generate enough money without having to sell our biggest asset. So you've got a good.
Yeah. Yes and no.
25 mil. No. You've got Alvarez that will probably go for 30, 35 mil. You've got a number of other players. I'm not sure about Paqueta. For me at the moment, it's a toss-up between which of the two do we keep, Paqueta or Kudus? And I'm beginning to lean towards, let's talk about Paqueta for a moment, because Paqueta, if he's innocent, I think we'll sell him. I think he's had enough of the Premier League. He's probably had his fill. Yeah. And I think he is gonna want to. I think even Man City coming in for him, I don't think he's going to be interested. I think he wants a bit of TLC. And I know we keep hearing about, flamenco, etc. But I think he'll be gone.
He's a deeply emotional character, right? He wears his heart on his sleeve, as you saw against Spurs, and I felt sorry for him. Now I don't know what that was all about, but this must have hurt him deeply. Whether he was, I doubt very much. Again, I'm just speculating, but I doubt very much he was involved. But he might have been something that he was loosely aware of something going on, but that doesn't make him guilty of facilitating it, right, or contributing to it. And if he gets away with it, even because it doesn't sound like they've got any compelling evidence, does it? And if they haven't, then I think they had. He would have been convicted already.
I think so too. Yeah.
If they haven't got anything, well, shame on the FA to start with, right? Because they've dragged him and his family and the club and robbed us of the real Paqueta for over a year with no bloody evidence, nothing solid to convict him on. They should be fucking ashamed of themselves. And this is where I would support the club in going after the FA big time. It's appalling.
Yeah, it is appalling. I mean, we keep hearing different stories as to why there's a delay. First of all, it was the panel couldn't convene, and now we're hearing about it's his own legal team that weren't available. I don't know,
but the fact that it's taken, the way they've conducted themselves, the FA leaking stuff to the press since day one, trying to convict him before he even reached the tribunal.
Trial by
that should never happen, right? It should never happen.
Yeah,
trial by media. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
So I think, given that, I mean, if he's innocent, I think we'll sell him. I think he'll want to go. I think with a heavy heart. I think he's got it's something about West Ham. I think he's got, I think he cares for the club. And it's interesting saying that, but
we love a player who's a bit mad, and he's a bit mad. We sort of get him, right? We sort of get him. He does drive us mad with the diving, and with
and his misplaced passes. But other than that,
but we love a flawed genius, and he is a flawed genius. Definitely on his day, he comes into that category, and I kind of love him a little bit, right? I don't love Kudus.
I've kind of fallen out of love with Kudus.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to be one of the two that will go.
Yeah.
And if it is almost definitely Paqueta, we'll either lose Paqueta because he'll be found guilty.
Yeah.
Or we'll lose Paqueta because he'll be found innocent and he'll want to, he'll want to leave.
I don't want him.
And
I don't want Kudus, I mean.
Oh, right. Here's my dilemma. The reason why I think we've got two players who they're special. They can be. We know Kudus can be a special player. We've seen it. We've seen that he's a special player. Now, there was an interview he did, I think, earlier this week, where he answered a question about sort of the future, and the way he answered it seemed to suggest that he'll be at West Ham next season in order to improve on what has happened this season. And I don't think we can get rid of both Paqueta and Kudus. That's my feeling. That's my
going to be our choice. I don't think we will get rid of Paqueta if we're given the choice, right? He will either stay or go, but they're two completely different players in two completely different positions. Paqueta is not a number 10. He's a deep line midfielder, just the same as what you saw him play. Actually, in his right position the other day, he was actually not bad, alongside Souček. Even though it was a dull game, it weren't bad from that position. Where we lack is in the creative position behind the attacking players. That kind of, the one that is always available for the ball, the one that moves it on quickly and finds the attacker, or finds the winger, the one that plays the ball to Kudus, not Kudus, because Kudus,
agreed,
is a right winger, and a right winger only is not a number 10. And earlier in this season, I had a chat with Jim Grant from Stop Hammer Time. He came onto one of my shows. He's a very good observer of football, Jim. And what he said to me was, I said, play Kudus at number 10. Everyone was saying it, right? He said, no. You see, he plays with his head down. He said, how is he going to ever find a teammate when he plays with his head down? And
that's why you play him as a number 10.
No. As a number 10, you need to play with your head up, and you need to find people in front of you, and you need to release the ball and play a pass. All he does is look down and try to run past players. That's all he does. And when he was playing in the Moyes team on the counter-attack, he had a big load of grass to run into. Now he's got a big bank of players to run into. That's the difference. Yeah, he's a right winger, and he's a very good right winger. But given the choice, I'll take Bowen over Kudus. And frankly, the value that he's added to our team this year, we ain't going to miss him.
Yeah, well, this is the thing, but we know there's a player in there. I mean, I've got to look back. I'm going to really play devil's advocate now.
Go on, you do it.
And I'm going to ask you this question.
Yeah.
Bowen and Kudus were playing well last season, in the early part of last season.
Yes.
Under
Moyes. And
Moyes.
That version of football, that counter-attacking football, suited both of them better than this version.
So the question is,
the answer is yes.
Is it someone like David Moyes that can get the best out of these players?
Well, no, it's the Moyes style of football that can get the best out of these style of players, because they are being played the ball very, very quickly on the counter attack, and they've got space and not many players to run into or to run onto, and that's where Bowen's at his best, cutting in from the left, nipping on the right, and closing down an opportunity, getting a shot away early. That's his strength. With Kudus, he gallops up open ground and runs past players when he's built up ahead of speed, and they're on the back foot. And we saw that time and time again. Also a great finisher, Kudus, of unlikely opportunities. Now he's not really getting any chances, and when he does, he ain't putting them away. kind of lost his confidence in front of goal a little bit, I think.
Yeah.
But I think he's also lost his confidence as a right winger because he's coming up against dead ends all the time. 3-4 players around him, nowhere to go. They ain't going to leave him unattended. And so that Kudus playing in a counter-attacking top side would be an amazing asset to that side. He would score hatfuls of goals if he didn't have to defend, and it was just like lurking on the halfway line on the shoulder of the defender, the last defender, and you're just waiting for a ball to be played through. You imagine him playing for a Liverpool or even an Arsenal or someone like that, right? They're not counter-attacking sides, but the fact is, the other teams need to defend with numbers behind the ball a lot of the time, don't they? They need the only way they're going to hit Arsenal, for instance, the only way they're going to hit Arsenal is on a counter attack, and that's when it's kind of a counter to the counter attack, if you like, right? He will get 10 chances a game playing for a big side, and he'll put a couple of them away, right? He's not going to put them all away because he misses. But for West Ham, still the most adaptable player out of the two, the one that can the one that can mold himself to the team and do a good job irrespective, because he's carried on scoring, is Jared Bowen. Kudus has stopped scoring and he's not doing many assists either. It's 4 and 3.
Would you then argue then that or would Kudus argue, well, you're not playing me in my best position out on the right, but look what I can do if I was played there on a regular basis. I mean, there's that argument as well. I don't think he will ever replace Bowen on that right-hand side.
The fact is, we bought Kudus when we didn't need another right winger. We had one.
Yeah.
Right. So what was the point? Now, it was fantastic for us in that half of season. Once we convinced Moyes to put him in the team, he left him out for 10 games, didn't he? He kept scoring when he was when he came on as a sub, didn't he? Newcastle and whatever, wasn't it? And then rest is history. But you're absolutely right. He was far more effective in a Moyes team. The Moyes strategy was to move Paqueta inside on about 70 minutes. And again, I'll give credit to Moyes because putting Paqueta on the left was actually a good idea in retrospect, right?
Yeah.
And moving him inside with the last 20 minutes and letting him feed Bowen and Kudus, it weren't bad. It was like making the absolute best out of the players that we had, and it was a mishmash of players. So I would say that those sort of players that Moyes, the type of football that Moyes was trying to play, the players that could fit that system is a broad range of players who are quite easily available. You don't necessarily need to go for a Kudus. That's what I'm saying. What we need to do with Potter, because he's playing a much more intelligent brand of football, is we do need something special in the middle in terms of a creative midfielder to
absolutely. Well, we need a box to box and a creative midfielder.
We need someone to unlock defenses still, and I know Lewis Orford would make a great backup, but we need a primary number one in that position, and there's going to be a lot of competition for those sort of players. Yeah, it ain't going to be. Whereas, I suppose with Moyes, the style of football was such that you could cobble together a team, and if you just happen to have some real bloody top class talent up front, then in the counter-attacking system, it's going to look spectacular, isn't it? But same as the guy that came from Man United, what's his name, Lingard. He looked like a world beater playing for us, didn't he?
It wasn't well. Yeah, he did. And Moyes never got over that, did he? Really, when we couldn't get him on a permanent.
He kept waking up in the middle of the night, just saying, "Jesse."
So this goes on to we're not going to talk about specific transfers tonight, but just the general way we've managed our transfer business, and we kind of alluded to it at the start of the show, where what I'm hoping.
I've lost you. Have I lost you? What's happened? I can't hear you. What's happened? Hold on a minute. Audio. No, mine's still working, and mine is still working. So, can you hear me, people? Because I can. I hope you can hear me anyway. I think you can. Oh, excellent. You can hear me. So let's take over Stel's show for a minute. Yeah, I think it's an interesting discussion, isn't it? With Kudus. It's a shame, in my opinion, in that he was absolutely magical for a time. Magical for a time. Are you back? No, you're not. You're not. You're still not there. I don't know what's happened, Stel. You've gone all quiet. He was magical, and we all wanted to see that magical Kudus service again this season, didn't we? Surface again. And it just didn't he didn't come back. He's never come back. But I do expect him to play well at Man U on Sunday, because I expect Alvarez to play well as well. You're back, I think.
Am I back?
You're back. You're back.
I don't know what happened there, people. The mic just went completely dead, and then the camera went completely dead. And this usually happens with me. You know, and people keep telling me I need to put 10p in the meter.
Got the power plugged into the laptop?
Sorry?
Have you? You got the power plugged into the laptop? It's like it went into sleep mode. It's run out.
Maybe it did. Maybe that's what happened. I've done that before. So I'm back. So sorry about that.
I've got a prediction for you. I think both Kudus and Alvarez will play tomorrow, and both of them will turn up because it's away against Man U. Shop window time. What do you reckon? Yeah. I don't doubt that at all. I don't doubt that for a minute. I think that is very likely to happen. Let me finish on Kudus, because I've got a theory that I get what you're saying. I absolutely do. But I do actually see him as a number 10. I think maybe next season, when Somerville comes back, playing out on the left-hand side, because Kudus hates the left. You know, he doesn't want to play there. Doesn't like it. He's put a lot of endeavour in, though. I mean, you can see there's effort there. How's he going to find his pass without looking up, though, still?
Sorry?
How's he going to find a pass without looking up?
Yeah, I get that. I hear that. I totally get that. But I think you put him closer to the goal in the middle. Yeah. You know, almost playing two strikers. Almost.
That might work. That might work.
Almost. And so you have Bowen in his natural position. You got Somerville out on the, and you got a box-to-box midfielder and a creative midfielder behind Kudus. I think you might see Kudus come to life.
Yeah, you're turning.
You know, that's why I'm thinking. Yeah. You know, and I totally get what you're saying. I totally agree with you that Paqueta and Kudus played completely different games. Paqueta is a deep lying midfielder. You're absolutely right. Kudus is better on the right hand side, but Kudus, if you had the right players around Kudus, I think you could get more out of him if he played in a central role.
But still, we've got such a massive rebuild to do. I think we need to sell them both. Possibly, and you know, I've been fiddling around with figures, and I sort of said earlier, you know, you got the Gerd 25 million, you got Alvarez 35 million. There's 60 already. I think Souček will go. Yeah, do I want him to go? I don't know. 2025.
Yeah, I think you'll get. Well, you might get your money back. You might get 20 million for him. There's 80 million there, and then you got.
Will carry a decent fee because his stats are all right. I've bet Chris 50 quid that he'll go for 16 to 20 million. I'm going 16 million.
Right. You know, so you can build up a good sizable war chest. Yeah. And that's before you even let Paqueta and Kudus go. I mean, if you sold everyone that we think might be sold, you could bring in 200 million pounds. Give or take. 180
I would love
million
to keep
pounds
Paqueta, because Paqueta literally carries a threat, just him being there. And I'd love to have a motivated Paqueta for one season. It would be amazing. I just don't think he's going to stay here, and I don't think we need to keep one of them. I think we just need to keep Paqueta if he's willing to stay. I don't think we should keep Kudus. Don't forget, Stel, there was three incidents that happened earlier this season. The first two was Alvarez getting himself sent off deliberately twice. The second incident was Kudus getting himself sent off and double sent off by acting like a big fucking baby and getting a 6-game ban, which I thought was appalling. And I haven't forgotten that. That meant he didn't give a toss, because he doesn't lose it like that, does he? So I'm sorry, I haven't forgiven him for that, and I haven't forgiven Alvarez for that either. I think it was just appalling, especially Alvarez with the Liverpool game, all those bloody fans that went up there, you know? Probably you as well, right?
Yeah, I was there. Yeah. And I remember saying, "Don't dive in." I remember we was watching it, and we were saying, "Don't dive in." And
he knew what was coming. He knew what was coming.
Yeah. Okay, we'll go on to the way we do transfers now very briefly, because we keep touching on it, then we keep going on off on a tangent.
Yeah.
So over the years, what we've done is we get a new manager, and I've said that I've done several shows on this now. We're getting a new manager in, and then we pander to the manager. Yeah, rightly so, I guess. A manager's got a style of football he wants to play, and he wants to bring players in who play that style of football. And the way we've been talking tonight, we're almost in danger of doing that again with Potter. We've been saying we need players to, and rightly so, we need players to come in to play Potter style. What we've not got is a West Ham style. What we look at, almost not with envy, but we kind of look over our shoulders and we look at the Brightons and the Brentfords, etc., and we go, how can they get all these players in, and when they change a player or when they sell a big player, another player comes in and they just start where they left off? For us, it's another rebuild, Gary. I've lost count at the rebuild. This is what, our fourth one in a row.
Still, if I had my way, I would keep Souček. I would keep Paqueta. Right? I would not let Kilman or Todibo go. I would literally bring through 3 kids. We know who they're going to be. It's bloody obvious who they're going to be. We're letting a load of players go, and then I would make 5 or 6 signings, because I think, as Danielle just said in the comments just now, swapping out the entire team like that, a lot of those players who are going, don't forget they've barely played a part. So it ain't going to matter, is it? If you bring in squad filler replacements, that's fine. It's the first teamers that I'm worried about. How many first teamers are you going to be swapping out? It's going to be Emerson. It's going to be a centre half is going to come in to be the third or the one of two to play alongside either Todibo or Kilman. The midfield, so that's 2 so far. In the midfield, you're going to need to bring in a whole new midfield pretty much, unless you keep hold of Paqueta. So let's say 2 players, first team starters. So that's 4 first team starters. And then you're going to probably start the season with Füllkrug and another striker, hopefully interchangeable. But anyway, look, that's Füllkrug is still going to be one. You're going to have to replace, unless Somerville's fit, you're going to have to replace the no, you probably need 3, won't you, in midfield in total to cover all of those.
If you're going to replace them, if you're going to rebuild the midfield, you're going to need a defensive midfielder. You're going to need a creative midfielder, and you're going to need a box-to-box midfielder.
So 3 positions, and then you've got left side, you've got Somerville, right side, you've got Bowen, and up front, you've got Füllkrug and or new striker who comes. So that's about right. That's 5 or 6 players who are going to be regular first team starters. Now, for that to be successful, you've got to have a 100% hit rate, right? 80% hit rate, something like that. It's never going to be 100%, is it? But what it can't be is what we had this summer, which is virtually, apart from Wan-Bissaka, who else has been consistent?
No one else. Even Bowen's been injured, but you know what you're going to get with Bowen. But other than that, Wan-Bissaka stands out, by a country mile. Yeah.
So what looked like a great window was a fucking great big disaster.
It was a massive disaster. It's really interesting. I remember, when the window shut, and we're all patting ourselves on the backs, going, "We've won the transfer window."
Yeah.
But that's all we did.
Poor deluded fools we were. It was really only at West Ham could that happen. That literally almost none of those players work out. It is just typical of what happens with us. This time is, I do fear if we don't get it right, we're going to get relegated.
Yeah, Espen said exactly the same thing. Yeah. I think this goes to the show. You talked about the show I did this morning about Macaulay and the data-driven analysis and all that sort of stuff. What is giving me, and I know Ralph.
It was a good show, by the way. I love very factual. I really enjoyed that.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah. But and because I'm always trying to look for the optimistic side, I've got a bit more faith now in the transfer window. But again, what we need to do is we must build a squad for Potter, but we can't build a squad only for Potter, if that makes sense. Because if Potter leaves in a year and a half or 2 years, we don't want to have to start again, do we?
No,
and this has been our perpetual problem. We get a manager in, different style, get a whole squad in, we have to rebuild. That manager goes, getting another manager, a complete rebuild, because that manager doesn't like the players that he's got from the previous manager. And that's got to stop, hasn't it?
Of course it has. Bilic was playing lovely football with great players, moved into this ground. He bought a load of, Sullivan bought a load of crap for his European campaign. You know, that was one of the worst transfer windows ever. It was diabolical. Budget price shopping, it
really was, wasn't it? God, the players were coming in thick and fast.
And then we bought in Moyes, who sorted it out with his own couple of players. Was that the window where he bought in Bowen and Suchek, or was that the following one?
That was the second one, wasn't it? Because the first one, I think he brought Hugill in.
Yeah, that's right. He brought Hugill in. That was a great hit. You know, we made money out of Hugill on balance.
No, I don't think we did make money out of Hugill.
I think we did. I think we go back and check the loan fees. He was almost eternally on loan, and we were getting loan fees, and they were taking on his wages. I think we made money on him. But anyway, that aside, bit dodgy. That aside, we changed the brand of football for Moyes, and then changed it again with Pellegrini, who was into a completely different, open, passing game. And then we changed it again with Moyes as Moyes' ball came back. And then we said to Moyes, well, all right, appreciate what you're doing, but now we want you to play a more enterprising, attacking, progressive way of football. So let's bring in some of those players, Scamacca, Kera, Aguerd. Moyes didn't know what to do with them, so he cut them out and bought his own players, his own style of players back in again. More money wasted, and then Moyes goes and we say, Lopetegui, you come in here, have your choice players. Oh, I'm going to play this reckless counter-attacking, we're going to push high up the pitch and not have a defence. Don't need defenders anymore. Can I have the players support that, please? They got in players that just weren't suitable for his system either. And now Potter's come in playing a possession-based system, which is, it's not as gung-ho as what Lopetegui wants to play. It is more controlled aggression. But it's pivotal that you have a couple of really intelligent players to unlock the opposition defence. Otherwise, you just knock on a fucking closed door all the time. And so a uniquely unsuitable set of players who, with defenders who cannot lead and in no way press resistant, the keeper who can't pass and can't distribute, nobody to unlock the defence, 2 right wingers instead of 1 playing on the pitch every week, a striker who's just come back to fitness and, after being out for bloody ages. I mean, he's been dealt a bad hand, not only by previous managers, but the ownership has got to come into question here, because
the ownership absolutely it does. And this is why I'm really hoping, I almost praised Sullivan in a sort of like backhanded way, by saying, has he finally got it right? Now I don't know if we've developed our own data system that Brighton have got, but it sounds like we're pretty damn near it, with the likes of Max Hahn at the club, and now we're recruiting another analyst, etc., and with Macaulay, etc. We've got a lot of data, technical knowledge at the club now, which we've never had. Moyes didn't believe in it. It wasn't his approach. But I'm kind of hoping that this may be the start of a complete, and I had the same hope when Steiden came in, but I've got the hope now we've got the foundation, not just an individual, but we've now got a foundation in place that should and when Potter goes, we'll be able to use the foundation now that we've got to bring in the same type of players. But we've also got to bring in a similar sort of manager to keep that style of football going as well.
We do.
Herein lies the problem. The problem being, because we've got an owner like Sullivan, he panders to, and ironically, and I know viewers are gonna laugh at this, but he actually panders to us. The reason why we got Pellegrini, and if you remember, that was all the marches. If you remember that time, it was all the protests, etc.
Yeah, but he said we demanded Pellegrini. We didn't.
No, we didn't. But I think he got Pellegrini because he was a winner. And I think Sullivan thought, I'll get a winner in and everyone's going to be happy. and that's probably the only reason why we got Pellegrini in, because he thought it was going to be, he's won the league and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. No, that's fine. But look, if I was to advise Sullivan in some way, not that he listens to any advice off of any fans, I think we were all excited about Stuyton for one reason, really, and that was the football club was going to finally get a bit of structure, much needed structure, and it was going to plan for the future. And the director of football, who never was a director of football, by the way, but we thought he was,
was going
to.
I love this comment by Garino.
What did he say?
We got lots of data, but we still only got a Commodore 64.
well, yeah. I will come to that, but But
sorry, mate. I'm sorry.
This is just a little bit. We all thought it was going to be a proper traditional director of football system where he comes with good references. And we didn't know the half of it, did we? But he came with good references. We thought he'd done a load of shit at Leverkusen, even though people started debunking that immediately. But we gave him the benefit of doubt. Look at what he can do. He can come in. He'll get his own empire. He'll set it up in his own brand. We'll be playing Leverkusen football in the youth team, in the first team, and everything else. Right?
We are deluded, aren't we?
Flow through. It'll be amazing, right? And Stuyton will pick the players to go into that system, and then they'll mature like fine wine, and then one will get worth a few quid and we'll sell him and we'll just promote the next in line for that position. It'll be just a beautiful thing. But there's one little problem with that, and that is David Moyes and David Sullivan had no intention of letting Tim Stuyton take over any form of control or ownership of.
Do you think
of that sort of system? I don't even know if Stuyton was suitable to do the job.
I would question that. David Moyes, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I mean, that's why they fell out. They had completely different views on how to, run the team. I think Sullivan really wanted Stuyton to succeed. The trouble with Sullivan is he doesn't see a job through to the end in a way, because you've only got to do a shit show once with Sullivan and he'll go, fuck it, I'm not having you. That's why he got, the shit show was last summer.
This is where the data-driven approach falls flat on its arse.
This is what I'm worried about.
It is data versus emotions.
Yeah.
And football supporters like us, we're emotional. I'm not so emotional as many, nor you, but nonetheless, it only takes a couple of defeats, a couple of bad performances, and think that people are saying, yeah, man, it's fucking useless, right? Because that's what you get at West Ham. West Ham, we feel mugged off for having to go and watch football in that stadium on the basis of a promise that the football would be good. And that's a pretty good argument, actually. We should expect something a little bit better served up on the pitch. But that means we are totally impatient. And when you look at what he did at Brighton, it took several years, 3.5 years, in fact, for it to click. And there was iterative improvement, gradual iterative improvement throughout those 3 years, even though the fans didn't like it, even though they went something like 40 games, I don't know, without 4 months without scoring a goal at home, 4 months without winning a game at home. The Brighton fans who were conditioned to life in the Withdean, watching them in an old athletics track, suddenly they're chuffed with being in the Premier League, and they showed the patience. They were getting annoyed, but they showed the patience. They were sticking with the man. The man himself, Potter, was being judged by Tony Bloom, the owner, on data only. And so Tony Bloom would analyze the data. They've just finished what is gradual progression. So they just about stayed up. Then they finished a couple of places above. Players have been brought in and integrated into the team. Players have been brought up from the youth team and been integrated into the team. Tony Bloom, being data-driven, told Potter what outcomes he wanted. And according to Tony Bloom, he was right on track and doing well. Carry on. I'll get you some more players. We carry on the progression. No way that's going to work at West Ham. No way on earth that's going to work at West Ham. Number one, because as soon as the fans get upset and start screaming and shouting and demanding the manager's head, Sullivan's going to get all emotional. And
this is what I mean. Sullivan will pander. He will pander to, our emotions, and that's not the way it should be. Yeah.
I think it's over the top at the moment, though, I've got to say, because people have forgotten what they were saying when Potter was 6 games in, when he walked into a shit show, had a massive injury crisis. And so they were just forgiving him because he's in this situation. He beat Fulham, then we beat Arsenal, then we don't win again for bloody ages. But as of that little run that happened, something along the line about game 8 or 9 or something, someone called it, well, fuck it, he's won hardly any games. Imagine if this goes on, right? So all of a sudden, it's about the high-level stats of how many you've won and lost, and that early misfortune with having no players and having loads of injuries and a massive injury crisis, that don't count anymore.
Yeah, yeah. That's why we can't keep, as much as a lot of fans are now saying, Potter's not the man, Potter out, etc. I can't, I can't go with that because it just adds to the confusion that's West Ham United, because it doesn't help to keep chopping and changing all the time. One could argue we didn't get the right manager in after Moyes. Yeah, fair. Lopetegui wasn't a lot of people's choice, and
was he as bad as he seemed though?
He was chaotic. He was chaotic.
Ever been bad anywhere else other than West Ham? I think the answer is no on that. I mean, he was awful with us, and he deserved to get sacked. But he couldn't handle life at West Ham, could he?
No. And it is demanding, and it should be. It's a Premier League team. It should be.
Think it is. These people don't think it is when they come to little old West Ham. They think it's a walk in the park still.
Yeah.
The amount of focus we've always got for our relative success, we've always got an inordinate, it's really an out of proportion amount of media exposure, West Ham. And they only realise that when they become the manager.
Yeah. And then the spotlight really is focused. Yeah.
Do you reckon he gets less attention here than he got at Chelsea? I don't think he does. I think he gets about the same amount.
He probably does. You're probably right. I mean, let's finish it with, do you think Potter will do well, and do you think he's the right man for the job?
I do think he's the right man for the job. I think given time, he'll do well. I think given the right pieces for the jigsaw, he will do well. But it does depend on, that's a lot of depends, right? I mean, it depends on this, it depends on that, depends on the other. It also depends on the crowd, the fans, especially on social media, being a little bit patient and looking at how things develop. But I think the only way he's going to save his job, if I'm being honest, is to hit the ground running next season. Otherwise, the price tag of those new signings will be quoted every day to him.
Well, this is I'm not going to finish on that. Then we'll carry that on, because I think the next thing, I agree with you on the patience. I said it myself. When Potter came in, I said, we've just got to give him time. Look, there's no denying it's been shit. 3 wins out of 15 games. It's been awful, absolutely awful. Yeah. But you are right to point out, think about the things that have happened in that time, all the injuries, etc., etc. Then you keep hearing about the bust-ups behind the scenes that's still going on, and players falling out. Look, as much as we admired the German for speaking out, that didn't bloody well help, really, did it? In all honesty,
you would hate it if a member of your team in anything, if a member of your team in an office did that, you would hate it.
Of course you would. Of course you would. He may be right, but that's not the point.
Undermines undermines a manager.
But I think, and this is what worries me about the transfer window is, we'll sell all these big name players, we'll sell the Kuduses or the Paquetas or the whoever's, and then we'll go and buy someone who's 20 mil, 25 mil, 5 mil, 15 mil, something like that. And what worries me is just a bit like the Dawson discussion we had earlier on. People are going to, who the hell is, what are you doing buying you've just sold Kudus for 75 mil and you've gone and bought his replacement for 15. That's what I'm worried about next. What I'm worried about is the patience of the fans are going to go, hang on a minute, you're selling all these big players and now you're only buying, players for half the money. What are they going to do? But Dawson is a prime example of what a player, can do. Doesn't have to be the most expensive player to do the best job.
I'm sick of big stars. I'll tell you what, if a star wants to come here still, I'm not talking about a star that's just about to be developed and he's on his way and he's going to use us as a stepping stone until his next club, like Kudus, like Alvarez. If we're going to buy a star, it will have to be for one of those pivotal positions, for instance, the playmaker in midfield, where we have to shell out a bit of money for a proven player. that player's got to want to play for us. It
Yeah.
can't come to us with a bad attitude. He's going to want to help this team move forward.
Yeah.
Because Man United have arguably got a similar problem to us in their dressing room.
Yeah, they have. Yeah. Yeah.
Attitude is everything. Honestly, no, I think someone said it. I don't know what podcast to listen to, but they said no arseholes. That's exactly right.
Yeah. I just hope when, when we do start with a whole new midfield of players that probably half of us haven't heard of before, with a striker that might have played in the Danish league or whatever, I just hope that we as fans are going to give these players the chance to demonstrate what they're because you just said, Potter's going to have to hit the ground running. A rebuild doesn't always work straight away, does it?
No,
a rebuild might take half a dozen games before those players settle in.
It's my fear. It might take longer than that, but my fear is
take longer than that.
My fear is that you replace half of the first team and they're given like 6 or 7 games, maybe 10 if you're lucky. Because people tend to put a number on it and say, I'll give him 10 games. And then that means after 10 games, it's a free-for-all.
Yeah.
With Lopetegui, I didn't really have a rule. I was sort of thinking around 10 games. As it turned out, it was about 12 or 13 until I got to the point where I realised there's nothing to be had with this guy.
Yeah.
With Sullivan can help facilitate success by making sure we execute the transfer window early and we take most of those players on the tour with us. We cannot be a month into the season still buying key players for the first team.
I totally agree. Now, what's interesting is where we started off tonight is the fact that we've made the announcements about players leaving. I was actually quite surprised that the announcements was made today with 3 games to go. I was actually surprised. And the thing
unnecessary.
It's unnecessary, but it got me thinking they've got plans. They already know who they're targeting and they want to bring in. That it's got to be a positive. It's got to be me. I've got to look for the positive angle, and I might be clutching at straws, but I immediately went just like you. Fucking hell! 3 weeks to go. How are those players going to feel? And then I thought, as soon as I thought that, I went, hang on a minute. They've announced 4 players leaving. Now we kind of knew we're going to leave. That means they probably got replacement. Fuck me, I am clutching. They got replacements lined up. That's the positive side of me.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, right? I hope what they're going to do with Antonio, I hope what they're going to do with Antonio is in the last minute of extra time at home to Nottingham Forest, they bring him on for a little 1 minute, 2 minute cameo, even though he's nowhere near fit, just to jog around a little bit because he can do that. And then he says bye-bye to both sets of fans. That'd be a perfect ending.
Oh, yeah. Good shout.
So I can't remember what else you said about the question previously, but you got me thinking about Antonio.
I can't remember either. We've spoken about a lot about stuff. It's like nearly 2 hours.
yeah. But look, there's so many what ifs, right? And if we need this to be perfect, and the owner needs to facilitate that, right? If I'm being honest, I don't believe he will, or I don't believe we've got the people who can get deals done for the right players. But I just hope, because all you can do is West Ham. It's a hope that kills you, as you know. I just hope that for once we do have the right type of window, and if we don't get all the parts, we get the important parts.
Yeah, build a good, strong first 11.
Yeah.
Build a good, strong first 11.
Yeah.
And of course, I know that everybody wants the youngsters to come in. I'd love to think that we're going to get about 4 or 5 academy players through this season, next season. Sorry, I don't think that's going to happen. I think Potts is nailed on.
Yeah.
Earthy, maybe it's quite possible Earthy might have to go out on loan again. Callum Marshall, superb season. I mean, the good thing is, well done to Carlton Cole for the way he's managed our loans this season, because they've always been a bit of a mishmash.
He's been amazing at it. The way he's placed those players. I mean, we've got 2 player of the years, haven't we?
2 players of the year, Earthy, young player of the year, Marshall player of the year. I'm sure Potts will get player of the year as well. I mean, it's been superb.
He's loved wherever he goes.
Yeah, but Yeah, because he's a bloody good player, Potts.
Yeah.
And I can see him. He may not start a lot of games, but I think he'll get a good chance next season. Scarles, of course, will continue his development. Earthy, maybe.
Drip feed them.
I'm
Just
not
drip
sure.
feed them in. Drip feed them in towards the end of a game. You can't this season because you drip feed them in. We're always chasing our tails. It's too desperate. Everyone pulling in the same direction, playing the same brand of football. That is the perfect scenario to drip feed players in.
Yeah. And then Callum Marshall, he's done superbly well at Huddersfield Town. But maybe that's League One. Maybe he'll be loaned out next season to a Championship team. And then, of course, you've got Orford, who I actually was surprised wasn't sent out on loan this season, but he'll probably be sent out on loan too. So
I hope
really,
not. I hope not, you know, because he is such an immense talent, that kid.
He absolutely is. But do you think he could, without going out on loan, do you think he can develop? You know, will he get that chance?
Playing, you know, the player to play those quick through balls, and a player who plays with his head up.
Very alert, isn't he?
Yeah, thinks a couple of moves ahead. He's going to be immense if he's drip fed into that team in the right way. He's one hell of a player in the making. That boy, really excited about him. I love him. I love an intelligent midfielder. There's nothing better.
Yeah, he is very intelligent. Yeah. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting.
It will be. Yeah.
Right, Gary. Nearly 2 hours, mate, on that. Thank you for coming on. Really, really appreciate it.
Good chat. Good chat.
And I've been looking at the comments and thank you, people. You know, there's an appreciation there as well. I know a few of them take the piss out of me because I'm too positive, but there you go. I can't help it. You know, I'm the way I am.
Listen, you go to games. If you wasn't that way inclined, you wouldn't go to games. It's the same with me, really. You try to be positive. You convince yourself to be positive, don't you?
Yeah, you do, don't you? Yeah. But anyway, mate, I really appreciate. Are you going on Sunday or?
I'm going to the posh seats. I'm at the back of the Stretford end in a box.
Going to the posh seats.
Yeah.
You see, some West Ham fans earn a lot of, bit like the players, people. Well, you know, some West Ham fans earn a lot of money.
You know what? It's what I've become accustomed to now, Stel. And so I've got my season tickets in the Bobby Moore stand. Just one quick thing. The other week, you know, when you got an email saying, dear season ticket holder, would you like to buy some more season tickets?
Yeah.
Well, let me have a look what they've got. Just, I don't want any more, but let me have a look. Anyway, they had a couple of those 1966 tickets, 7 rows back over by the dugout. Only about 5-6 seats along from the right-hand side dugout. Oh, they look nice. So I bought a pair of them, cost me an arm and a leg. So now I've got 4 season tickets and only 2 bums. So, you know, I'm going to try to, you know, I think I've got a taker for the other ones anyway. If I can't, I'll just, you know, whatever. I'll give them out and stuff like that.
Nice one. Well,
yeah.
Mate, really appreciate it. Thank you for coming on. I'm sure we'll speak again very soon. And again, I know everyone knows your channel, but people, if you've not subscribed to the Bobby Moore stand, please go and subscribe to that channel on YouTube.
Yeah, no, thanks everybody, and thanks Stel. It's been a good chat. I've enjoyed it. Always enjoy it.
It's been good. It's been cathartic.
It has. You're happy now.
See you later, mate.
See you later. Cheers.
Thank you, everyone. Really appreciate it. Thank you for your comments, etc. Always a pleasure to receive all the comments. I tried to put on as many as I could, as you know, I normally try to do. So have a great weekend, because it's going to be a great weekend. We're going to go to Manchester and spank them, aren't we? Well, you know me. Thank you all for watching and listening. If you've yet to become a subscriber, do subscribe, and I'll see you all very soon.